Who are we? We are dreamers. We are ambitious. We are committed. We are learners and leaders. We are generous and resilient. We are on a mission, and we are called to love. We are the church. We are better together. And our journey is just getting started.
I don't know about you. I think I saw a few familiar faces on there. Nelson, I think you were there, and we'll rewind it and we'll just leave it there. Here's Nelson. By the way, in case you're curious, he and his wife are responsible every week for making sure there's donuts back there. So, absolutely. Thank you so much for going and visiting Miss Sunny over on Western Center. And every time I go in there, she hooks me up with free donuts. And so thank you. It's like, oh, Pastor. I'm like, thank you. I'll take your free donuts. And so if you're wondering, I go there often. Anyway, hey, but we're so glad you're here today. My name is Scott Johnson. We haven't had a chance to meet. I would love to be able to shake your hand and just let you know how grateful we are that you chose to be here on a Sunday morning. Now, if this is your first time here, today's probably maybe a perfect Sunday for you to be here. Our mission today is we want to just kind of take the curtain back and let you see a little bit about who we are and what we really want to be about. And our hope and our prayer is that through the course of today, you realize that there really wasn't a curtain, that makes total sense. And it's not like on the other side of this proverbial curtain is this incredible or crazy mission. It's like, oh, that's churchy. I get it. I'm out. Our mission is we want you to see the heartbeat behind who we are and what we want to do here in our community. A couple years ago, we were in the series entitled Resolutions, and one of the questions that was asked within the series was a question that's really kind of penetrated a lot of what I think about and a lot of what we do, and it's been a question from time to time that I've heard even some of you talk about, and a question that we've wrestled with, but it is this question that what would you like people to line up at the end of your life and thank you for? Have you ever thought about that? I mean, when all was said and done, say you've lived a productive life, you've had an incredible life, and you're in your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, let's say you're in like the 110s, all right? That way, everybody in here, you've got a good 40 years left, right? You're in the 110s, you're sitting in your back patio. What do you want people to line up to thank you for? One of the things that I love is this idea of thinking with the end in mind, of trying to process and think through life from that perspective. And yeah, there might be some, well, that's rather egotistical. What do you mean? You want to think, but really, if you had the opportunity today to figure out what you want your influence to be as an individual tomorrow, wouldn't you move in that direction? And for us today, what I want to take this question, I want to reword it a little bit because I want to answer the question more like, what would you like people to line up at the end of our lives and thank us for? I mean, imagine that we're 50, 60, 7 years down the road, and we as an organization, we as a church are sitting in my front yard around our turquoise table because we're still going to be living there in 70 years, and that turquoise table is still going to be there. But imagine that you and I, imagine we are sitting around our turquoise table and we're talking about, reflecting upon what it is we want people to thank us for at the end of our life. Now, it can be a little bit of a morbid question, but if we don't really come to grips with this, then we're going to be wayward. We're just going to be moving in some direction, maybe an intentional direction, but more than likely, we're just going to be setting systems up and running, and then looking back and saying, oop, abort ship, we got to go another direction. Like, oh no, what did we do? And here's what I love. In fact, Chanel mentioned it and you saw the video. I love the opportunity that we have as a church. We are a part of a bigger church, a collection of churches across the nation that have this similar kindred mindset, this idea that we genuinely want to be for people. And from day one, we've gotten the chance to really kind of to anchor our ship to North Point, a church in Atlanta, Georgia, a church that has incredible influence. And one of the things that's cool is many of you guys have found us because, well, we've connected to North Point, and you moved here from Atlanta, you moved here from Buckhead or Woodstock or wherever, and all of a sudden you came and you said, okay, wait a second, I know what I was used to, and I'm going to a middle school. What is going on here? But even in that, here's what I know is with what has happened with our church, we are incredible stewards of the influence that we have. We are stewards of the extraordinary influence that has come from our partners in Atlanta, Georgia, and around the country. That we've got partners, that we've got individuals that have come here and that have connected with us because they were at a partner church in Kentucky, or they were connected to us at other areas of the country. And we come together, and the beautiful thing is we come together as a body of churches that are connected with one mission and one vision. Specifically for us, and what drew us to North Point so vividly was they have a mission to create churches, to create expressions of the local church that are generated for and geared at people who have checked out of faith. People who are no longer a part of church for whatever reason. And many of you are in here today, and that's been a part of your story. And we're grateful that you've re-engaged, you've come back, and you've said, you know what, I'm going to give church a second chance. Because for so many people, we lose the opportunity. Because of something somebody like me with a microphone said, all of a sudden people leave church saying, well, they're just not for me. They're just church people. All they do is they're just for themselves. They want nothing to do with people. They want nothing to do with the community. All they want to do is build their own kingdom. And that's not our mission. You see, we genuinely want to be a church where individuals, regardless of what you believe, you can come in and you can begin scratching your head and say, wait a second, I don't know that I believe exactly what they are saying or what they're doing, but you know what? I'm grateful for this church because I can ask questions. I'm grateful for this opportunity because I'm having a lot of doubts and I'm having a lot of questions and I'm curious as to how the Bible fits into life. You know, the last 4 weeks we've had this series, The Bible for Grown-Ups. And can I tell you, it has been incredible. The conversations have been stirred because for many of us, you were handed a Bible and you were told to believe, just believe. And all of a sudden you began to read through the Bible and you began to say, yeah, but wait a second, what about this? And you go to a pastor, you go to somebody with a microphone like me and you say, hey, I'm confused. This doesn't line up. And the answer tends to be just have faith, just believe, just get over it. And I want to encourage you, and I'm grateful that many of you have come and you've experienced this expression where you can bring your doubts, your concerns, your questions. You can bring the real you, and we want to have a conversation around that. And I love the fact that part of that has shaped the culture of who we are. In fact, part of that has shaped the culture that we've driven here within our church, and it's in large part because of you. In fact, one of the things that I love that has happened within our church is we've created, our network of churches, is we've created a leadership culture. And it's not because of anything necessarily that I've done, but it's because so many of you are leaders by nature. And you come in and you look and you see systems, you see ideas, you see thoughts. You're not willing just to sit back and take a barista model of church where you just walk in and say, I want a steamed cup of ministry. Can you do that for me? And we as a church hand you what you want and you go on your merry way. But we've got an incredible group of people within our organization, within our church, that are problem solvers, that are looking and trying to figure out how can we spin this flywheel? How can we be better at reaching people that have unchecked the box of faith? How can we as a church be better and be more efficient and be more driven at reaching people and sharing the message of Jesus with them? And I love that opportunity. Whether it's within several of our small groups, I mean, we've got some great leaders that are pushing that flywheel and learning on the fly. And we've got great CEOs. We've got individuals in this room that work for great companies, that are leading your own company, that are leading classrooms. I mean, we understand that classroom management is probably the most difficult management there is. And yet you come into a school when you don't have to come to a school. And you come with this idea that what can we do to be more efficient and effective at what we're doing and reaching people for Jesus? Not only a leadership culture, but we've been able to find a groups culture within our church. That's why we started this thing. Back in 2015, Alden and I, my wife and I, we were trying to figure out what our next step in ministry is, and this is what we knew, is that we had a group of people that were around us in probably the most difficult portions of our life, when everything had really just kind of unraveled, and we're trying to figure out how do we make sense of the crazy that we find. And on top of that, I'm wearing a pastor's hat, so I can't really be vocal about these struggles. And we found a group of people that accepted us and loved us the way we are. And the thing I love about this reality is so many of you have experienced that here today, and that's why we started. We love Sundays, we love Rose, but if I could be real honest with you, the heartbeat of what we do is the idea that growing spiritually cannot happen unless you connect relationally. Unless you have somebody to lean in on, to share ideas, to share thoughts, to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and for somebody to step into your corner and validate you and remind you that it's okay. God is still good. It's okay. This too shall pass. It's okay. You're going to make it. I don't know about you. Maybe this is just me, but I've been in those moments where I don't know if God's really there. And yet I've got to put that pastor's hat on, and I've got to be, hey, go Jesus. And having a group that knows me inside and out has been the most freeing thing for me, because I can share my struggles and they love me there, and they remind me that, you remember how God was good? Remember what happened back 10 years ago? Remember what happened 5 years ago? You remember when you really thought that having kids was never going to be a part of your story, and God surprised you with a Stephen? There's incredible truth when we get together as a group and remind us of what's happening. Now, the great thing is we've created this leadership culture, this groups culture, this idea that groups don't just happen within our adult ministry. As Chanel said, we love and we value the fact that groups happen even with the littlest of littles. I want our Wombaland kiddos to understand that adults are trustworthy, that you as a parent have a partner. And so that when they become upstreet kiddos, that these kiddos, they trust an adult that's in these environments, and they can ask any and every question, because elementary kids ask any and every question. And then when they get into junior high, they've been accustomed to asking any and every question to their kiddos. So then they begin asking any and every question about faith. Because we know as teenagers oftentimes try to undermine the very faith that we as a church try to build into it. And we want junior high kiddos and teenagers to have a place to ask the difficult questions. And then in high school, we've got student impact, where we value showing our high schoolers an opportunity to put their faith in action. And you've been a part of that. You've been on the leadership side of curating and helping us create these environments that you've come to enjoy and come to like. And I'm so grateful for that. When we got started as a church, we kind of anchored ourselves to this idea that we wanted to be North Tarrant Church. And the reason we did is because we saw what was happening on the north side of Fort Worth. And North Tarrant Parkway is kind of nice, but the bigger picture is this, is that when it came to our county, that there is growth and expansion all over the North Tarrant area. And so we began looking at a map, and honestly, I put this map right here. We just decided that we wanted to put our logo right in that area, and we wanted to be as intentional as we can about finding influence in this area. Now, the fascinating thing about that is when we did that, we had a couple families in Lake Worth, a family in Galveston, a couple families in Wise County, and we were really the only couple in that little dot. And we had just parachuted in and said, let's do this, y'all ready? And the fascinating thing is, over the next 3 years, this is what's happened, is that dot has become that kind of influence. Every single one of those little dots is a place where somebody who's engaged in our church today lives. And that's not it. I mean, right now, we even go way up you go to Springtown, you can go south to Benbrook, you can go far west to SMU's campus, you can go north to Denton. I mean, it's fascinating when you begin to see the influence that you have helped curate. But how many of you have had fun inviting people to come to church? Especially if you live far, far away. Like if you live in Wise County, we understand. Or even if you live on the east side, if you live south and you begin to say, you should come to my church. You know what we found is there's a lot of churches that are in between here and there. And it's hard when you say, oh yeah, we meet at a middle school. And they're like, oh, excuse me? But here's what I've seen is you can take this and you can begin to draw. That right there is basically a 20-minute drive radius around where we are today. Did you know in that circle right there are hundreds of thousands of people that are living there, and there are thousands of homes that are being built on a regular basis. It's fascinating to see the growth that's happening in this area, all within a 20-mile radius, 20-minute drive radius, not 20 mile. 20-minute drive. You drive North Tarrant Parkway, you're like stop sign, stop sign, stop sign. Like that takes time. Give me interstate, don't give me stop sign. Just being honest with you. So what do we do with this? How do we leverage this reality? Because here's what I know, is we've got influence there, but there are thousands of people. In fact, if you were to take the percentages, even in the Bible Belt, the percentages of people that go to church on a regular basis is in the teens. Think about that for a second. The percentage of people that are expressing their faith, that are going to church on a regular basis, is in the teens. As a country, less than 7% go, and that's even a generous expression. There is an incredible opportunity with new growth coming in. There's an incredible opportunity with individuals that are your neighbors, individuals that are your friends, individuals that live in our community that have either unchecked faith, or they've decided that faith isn't for them, or maybe they tried it at one point and then they saw their parents and how they treated them. And they said, you know what? I've got none of this. I want nothing of it. I'm done. You see, those people live next to you. They live next to me. Those people, they are hungry for something bigger in this world. And so today, what I want to do is I'm going to ask you just to dream with me for a second. I'm going to ask you just to come. Imagine that, after church today, we all come to my front yard and we're all sitting around. There's like dozens of turquoise tables. We've got a turquoise table. I love it. You should come by. By the way, Halloween, you should come hang out at our house. Anyway. Bring it. Cooking hot dogs. Anyway. But I want to just allow you to dream with me for a moment. Because if I were going to re-engage with that question of what do we do with our influence? How do we handle what we've been given? How do we manage what is happening? I want you to dream a little bit with me, because these are the contributions I want us to have in this area. These are the contributions when I begin to think of what we as a church can stand on, what we as a church can believe in, what we as a church can do. These are three things that I want us to really lean into and be intentional about where we're going. The first thing is this. The first contribution I would love for us to have is I would love for us to live in a world where the church is considered an essential part of our community. I mean, you think about that. It's almost, you read it and you kind of snicker a little bit. One of the guys that was very influential, he's an incredibly smart guy. He pastored a church when he was alive. He's since passed. He pastored a church in London, it's the London Tabernacle Church. And one of the things that London Tabernacle did is they were very forward in being about the community and being about orphan care and being about helping those that are oppressed and frustrated and can't get a break. And somebody, when talking about Spurgeon's church, made this comment. said if London Tabernacle were to ever close their doors, the community would grieve their absence. I mean, you think about the churches we have in our community today. If they close their doors, would we as a community really grieve their absence? Would we as a community really think, all right, I mean, probably the majority of us would say, okay, well, there's a few more. We'll just go check another one out. I long for a day where the world we live in, where church is considered an essential part of our community. And one of the ways you have helped us, even in our small expression, you have helped us to leverage that is through what we call Be Rich, which is coming up in November. It is an incredible opportunity. I know Be Rich sounds like, well, wait a second, who's getting rich on this? But you know, Paul challenged Timothy and said that we should live our lives and we should be rich in love and good deeds and being generous. And one of the things I love is you as a church over the last 3 years, we've raised over $20,000 to give back into the community, to give to individuals that are down and out, to give to local charities that are trying to find a place to stand. In fact, you've helped us scholarship 5 different girls every single year for the last 3 years to go and get college scholarships. Because they were in a situation where they were abused, where they were beat down, where they were whether it be domestic abuse or substance abuse. And yet you got to be a part of celebrating their life and giving them an identity. What if every church was an essential part of every community? What if when churches began to pop up, the community, rather than saying, oh, here comes another church, what if they applauded you and celebrated you and said, thank you so much. Because of what you're going to do in our community, we are going to be able to do so much more. Our kids are going to be better educated. Your assistance is going to help us ensure that divorces are down. Your assistance is going to be able to help us make sure that kids are being raised where they have food in their homes. And I long for a day where this is true. And your leaders, I need your help. How do we make this a reality? Second contribution I would love for North Tarrant Church to have in our community is I would love for there to be a world where people skeptical of what we believe, you've met those people that are skeptical, you go to church, eye roll. A world where people skeptical of what we believe are envious of how well we treat each other and amazed at how well we treat them. I mean, that's the brand of religion that Jesus kicked off with the resurrection. Jesus made the statement in one of his closing days. He made the statement. He's looking at the disciples. They've got this great command. I mean, they were very eager about the law and the prophets. They knew the Old Testament. They were excited about it. And then Jesus came and they heard a lawyer talk to Jesus and say, hey, okay, there's like 600 plus commands. Which is the greatest? And Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is just like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And so I can only imagine these disciples are like, okay, so how do I love God? I think I understand how to love my neighbor, but how do I love God? Like, is it sacrificial? Like, what does that look like? How do I make sense of this? And Jesus saw that in them and he prodded them and he said, you know what? I'll tell you what, they will know you are my followers by the way you love one another. And then Jesus authenticated that love by dying on a cross and coming back to life. And it emboldened them. It gave them courage. It gave them an incredible marching order that what we need to do is we need to go love. And the love that they had turned empires upside down. The love that they had revolutionized the area. The love that they had caused people all over the Mediterranean Rim, in Rome, and even to the outer parts of the world to begin to give notice to who Jesus is. I just believe that type of love could change our community as well. If we began to be more focused on how we can love our neighbor, how we can champion those around us. You know, over the last several months, I've seen within the course of the local church and even in our community that the church, we're not doing really good in loving. I see pastors and I see individuals with great power mocking other individuals that are making great differences in our community. I see individuals that are trying to make sense of racial relations and how do we do this? Where do we go? What do we do? What do we make sense of? And in light of all that, I I just believe that when it comes to Jesus' marching orders, the question should be, what does love require of me? And when we love one another and we love each other well and we're in each other's corner, we got each other's backs, we say we're in it together, I just want to see a world where those people are envious of the way we love each other. And then when we see them and we begin to treat them with that same kind of love, they begin to say, wait, we've got division of thought. I tend to believe that just because there's diversity of thought doesn't mean there needs to be a division in the community. And so what if we began to lean into that? And we began to have the conversations, we began to love like it's never been loved before, and we turned our country upside down. Maybe I'm just a little simple, but I just believe it changed the empire, it changed the world once, and I believe it can change it again. Contribution number 3, I want to see a world where every community is ecstatic that a church is here. I want to see a world where those skeptical of what we believe, they are envious of the way we treat each other and amazed at how we treat them. And the third thing, and this is a little bit interesting, is I want to see a world where people want the message of Jesus to be true, even before they believe it to be true themselves. I want to see a world where your colleagues, they see the hope that you have and they desperately want to see the message of Jesus to be true because they see hope, they see love, they see joy in your eyes, and they begin thinking, there's no way that that's true, but man, I so want that to be true. I want to see a world where the people around us that have decided to disengage with church, that they desperately want to see that maybe this message of Jesus is worth following. Where maybe Jesus is worth it. I want to see a world where these individuals, and I know they're desperate to have a God that loves them. I want to see them understand that God knows them by name and God loves them and He's for them. Now, this is my dream. This is what I want to see happen within our local expression of the church. And this is what, when I begin to think about what I want people to thank us as a church for in 70 years, sitting around our turquoise table, I want people to be thinking about this reality. Because, even in the midst of this, Luke begins to capture what this looks like. Because this isn't foreign to us. This isn't foreign to just our community. This is something that has been happening since the very beginning. Luke documents what happens when people love each other well and they're doing these things well. In fact, Luke makes this comment when he's talking in chapter 16. He says, the law and the prophets were proclaimed, which the law and the prophets, that's what Jesus entitled the Old Testament. He says, the law and the prophets were proclaimed until the time of John. But since that time, the good news of the kingdom of God, the good news of what Jesus has done, the good news of how Jesus has invaded our space and changed our reality is being preached. And everyone is forcing their way into it. Listen to that. And everyone, because of the way they loved, because of what Jesus was doing, because of the way Jesus approached people and showed them a different way, because of the way that Jesus called people by name and he raised the dignity of women in a culture where women were seen as second-class citizens. He looked at people that had done things that were outcasts, that were foreign, that were sins and tax collectors that people would never hang out with. And he looked at them and he gave them dignity and honor and called them by name. And it says that and everyone was forcing their way into it. You see, I believe we can be an expression of that. And I want to encourage you and ask you and help and encourage you to help us in this regard. Because as a church, our mission is simple, is we want to inspire people to follow Jesus. That was Jesus' claim. He said, hey, why don't you follow me? Come follow me. Hey, I'll tell you what, drop what you're doing and just follow me. We want to do the exact same. We want as a church to inspire people to follow Jesus because what Jesus did is he brought the kingdom of God to earth and everyone is invited to participate in it. So what does that mean? What can we do You're probably sitting here saying, Scott, that sounds great and all, but you don't understand. I got a busy life. You just came to us and said, hey, this is what I need your help with. Could you jump in? Could you help us? You don't understand. I'm trying to raise kids. I'm trying to have kids. I'm trying to find somebody to have kids with. Scott, are you kidding me? We're trying to figure out how to kick my kids out of the house. I'm trying to find a job. Scott, life's a little bit busy for me. So why don't you do the church thing and just let me do my thing? And I get it. This is for me, right? And I want to share with you where we're going, but honestly, there's something I believe we all can do. And I believe there's something we all must do. And the reason we must do it is because Jesus came to bring the kingdom of God to everyone. To everyone. And everyone is invited to participate in it. And it burns me that people don't understand the beauty of what's at stake. That it's so misconstrued, that it's so foreign and ethereal that it's just it's easier to check out of faith than it is to really follow after Jesus. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. In fact, it's a habit. It's something we've talked about from time to time, but it's a habit I'm going to ask you to put into place. In fact, I don't know if you've read the book. Russell Duhigg wrote a book called The Keystone Habit. Now, the Keystone Habit, it's a cool little habit, but it's a habit that when you put this habit into your life, it cascades into every other area of your life. For instance, let's say you decide to put the habit of eating dinner around the dinner table 4 to 5 times a week. Now, for some, it's are you kidding me? If I can just eat dinner around the dinner table with my kids one night, this is good. But did you know there's actually studies that say that if you make that a habit, if you will decide and make it a habit to eat dinner around the table 4 to 5 times a week, what happens, it cascades into everyday life. Your kids begin to have better conversations. What's better conversations leads them to be better friends. And better friends begin to make wiser decisions. And when they're making wiser decisions, they're not making your hair gray. And when they're not making your hair gray, all of a sudden there's great cohesion in the household. And because the kids are making wiser decisions, they're doing their homework. And because they're doing their homework, they're making better grades and they're getting scholarships to go to college. And because they're getting scholarships to go to college, you don't have to worry about paying for their college. And they leave your house all because you ate dinner 4 to 5 times a week at the dinner table. You should try it. Another keystone habit that I have not necessarily tried. I've journaled how many donuts I've eaten in a week, but if you think about it, when you begin journaling what you eat, you know what happens is you journal what you eat, and because you're writing down everything you eat, you begin paying attention to everything you eat, and because you begin paying attention to everything you eat, you begin losing weight, and because you begin losing weight, you know what happens? You begin exercising more because you begin feeling better, and you know what happens when you exercise more? All of a sudden, the discipline of eating and exercising begins to floor everything in your world, right? And you begin to work better at the office, and because you're working better, you get the promotion, and because you get the promotion, you get to take your kids on family vacations, and because you're taking your kids on family vacations, they love you more. And because they love you more, when they're old, they'll want to come back to see you. It's incredible, all because you journaled what you eat. Maybe I'm being a little far-fetched. I'm not journaling what I'm eating because I don't want to take my kids on vacation because I don't want them to. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But there's a keystone habit that when we begin to put it in place, it changes the way we see and do everything around us. And for many of us, you've heard me talk about from time to time, a keystone habit we have here at the church is invest and invite. And the reason we have this keystone habit is because when you begin to employ this in your life, you begin to look at the way we do church a lot differently. I love this text message or this call that I've gotten on multiple occasions. Hey, I invited somebody to come. You better not mess it up this week.
No pressure.
Great, right? But isn't it true that when you begin to invest, when you begin to leverage your relationships, you begin to look at the church from a completely different perspective? You begin to hope and pray that the music's going to be in point. I hope they sing a good song. I hope that this person's leading. I hope that person's leading. I hope this person's speaking. Oh, please let Andy be speaking. We don't want Scott. You begin to ask different questions Because the habit that you put in place, you begin to look at the reality of our organization from a completely different perspective. You're looking at it from the perspective of, I have a friend that has unchecked the box of church. I have a friend who's unchecked the box of faith, and they've opted to give it one more try, and I'm trusting you. You better make it work. And I love that. The reality is, and the reason that we think this is a big idea is it's not because we want to grow a big church. We want our community to experience the fact that God is for them. In the same way that when we go to a restaurant, you're quick to talk about it. You're like, oh my goodness, you need to go check out this restaurant. Had a conversation with Mike earlier today about a restaurant over on Beach Street that my neighbor just opened. And he's like, is it really good? I'm like, you don't want to miss out, right? Like, really, when we find something that is exciting, when we find something that we think is incredible, what we want to do is we want to tell people about it because we don't want them to miss out. And isn't that the same with our friends? With those that have unchecked church, with those that we have influence with, that maybe they've passed the buck on God, like, no, this isn't for me. We don't want them to miss out on the fact that God is for them. And maybe the reason they unchecked the box of church has nothing to do with God himself and everything to do with people like me. And we want them to have another chance. So we've pushed and encouraged this idea of invest and invite, this idea of curating trust, this idea of making friends and encouraging them. This isn't because we want projects. Like, your friends are not projects. You need to love them. It's not a project. It's not like, all right, I got them into church next. Like, that's not what this is about. This is about developing real relationships that help them grow in their relationship with Jesus and help you grow in the process. But I'm gonna ask you to go a step further, if it's okay. But you've heard me talk about these 3 knots. These are incredible knots that really, when all is said and done, they stir great spiritual conversations. They stir great opportunities for you to begin to leverage a conversation about who Jesus is to you and how the church has helped you. In fact, the 3 knots are this. If you ever hear somebody say they're not in church, they're not going well, they're not prepared for, it's a great opportunity for you to just invite. Hey, man, I'm not going to church anywhere. You'd never believe the church I went to, yada. Well, you should come to my church. Really? Why? Well, I don't know. You should come to my church. Because when I was struggling with that very same thing, I found hope and I found joy like I'd never found before. And there's friends there that actually love me. I hope you experience that. If not, come talk to me. We'll have a conversation. Not going well. Man, I found out the other day that I'm about to lose my job and I don't know what to do. You should come to my church. What? I'm losing my job. What is that? I just found out that we were expecting 1 and we went to the doctor and there's actually 3 in there. Uh-oh. We're not prepared for. Now, you might be saying, Scott, is going to church the answer to every single problem in the world today? Maybe. Do you know, there's a pastor that used to be in Tennessee. He's since gone on, Adrian Rogers. He made this statement. He had this really big Bible, and he was sitting in an airplane, and he was reading the Bible. He was doing it in such a way that everybody's going to see. And the guy sitting next to him looks and says, "Hey, it's a big Bible you got there." And he's like, "Yep." He said, "Why are you reading that?" And Adrian Rogers looked at him and said, "The reason I'm reading this is because within this book are the answers to all of life's problems: sin, sorrow, and death." And then he got back to reading. About 15 minutes later, the guy prods him. He says, "I've been thinking about that. I don't know any other problems in life." And if those are the 3 main issues that we deal with today, is sin, sorrow, and death, the message of the gospel is a message that provides hope in the midst of sorrow. The message of Jesus dying on the cross and living for you is a message that brings joy no matter what the circumstances are. And so when we hear that something's not going well, or they're not prepared for, or they're not in church somewhere, I want to encourage you to leverage that as an opportunity to invite them in, because we believe that it can help them and it can help you see from a different perspective. So to make it even a little more simple, here's a question I want you to ask when you see somebody. And this is a question I've been leveraging, so I want you to hold me accountable to this, but it's this. Why don't you come sit with me? Hey, instead of just saying, you should come to my church, where do you meet? I don't know. Why don't you personalize it and say, come and sit with me. Come and sit with me. You know, I've told our ministry directors, I've told Kyle and Candace and Nick, hey, if you ever ask that question and they say yes, I'll cover for you. Because it's that valuable. If you were to ask, if you're serving in an area and you ask a friend of yours to come and sit with you and they say yes, we will figure out a way to get you in this room because you sitting with your friend and allowing them to see who Jesus is and what Jesus is all about is more important than anything because they just gave God one more chance. So invest and invite. If you hear the three nods, ask strangers, have fun with it. I know I'm yellow. I like to talk to people. It makes for some awkwardness. But I want to encourage you, leverage the invitation. And should you have curiosity as to what to say, I want to give you just some simple marching orders, some words to put around it. And here's why. We're calling it our elevator pitch, if you would. It's not a sales pitch because sales pitches are there. They try to get people to do something. This is something that we want to make it so simple because one of the reasons people have unchecked the box of faith is because it's been so difficult. How do I explain it? What does it look like? Where does it go? So we want to give you some words and some handles whenever you're talking to somebody. How do we make sense of this? And so here it is. Life is complicated. You want to get it right. We want to help. Man, I'm so not prepared for triplets. You know what? Parenting is complicated. And I believe you want to be the best dad you can possibly be. And you know, at our church, we want to help you be the best parent you can. You know, it's really hard because we just moved to the area and we don't have any friends. We're not really plugged into a church. You know, moving to an area, moving anywhere new is really complicated. And we know you want to make friends and you want to do it right. And you know what? We as a church, we want to help you make that next step. You know, I just never thought that we would have this relational hurdle. I thought my relationships were going to be great. I thought this was going to be the one I was going to spend the rest of my life with. You know, relationships are complicated. And I want you to know that no matter what you're going through, that we know you want to get it right. And God wants you to get it right too. And we want to help. That's our game plan. I desperately want to see us as a church be a church that everywhere we go, that we are wanted in our community, that we are making a difference to such a degree that the people in and around our community, they would mourn should we ever close our doors. I desperately want to be a group of people, individuals that don't just see people as projects, but genuinely love everybody that they're around. To such a degree that those who are skeptic of what we really believe, that they would be envious of the love that you have for each other. And they would be amazed at how you could actually love them back. And I desperately want to see a community where people that are far from God desperately want to see the message of Jesus to be true. And I know we can do it. I know you can do it. I know we can do it. That is our marching orders. That's what in 70 years I want us sitting around my turquoise table talking about. But for us to be able to do that, it's not just about my influence. It's about our influence. Because I really believe that following Jesus can make our lives better. It can bring joy and hope and excitement to our life. It can help navigate the hurdles. It can help fight when we are down. And having people in your corner can help lift you up when times are tough. So I want to encourage you. What I want you to say is simple. Come and sit with me. Come and sit with me. Why? Because Jesus brought the kingdom of God to the earth. And I really believe that everyone is invited to take part. Would you pray with me? God, we love you. And God, I thank you so much for the opportunity that is before us. God, as a church, as I look at, Father, the individuals in this room, I'm so grateful. God, I see faces that trusted me in a living room in 2015 and said, let's figure this out. God, I'm so grateful for individuals who've leveraged their livelihood, who've leveraged their resources, who've leveraged their relationships to help create a space where regardless of your story, that you can be a part. And so God, I pray that you would encourage us. That God, while we as a church figure out how we can be an essential part of the community, and as we as a church figure out how we can inspire others to love like you loved us first, God, I pray that you would you encourage us to hear the nots and respond accordingly. God, I know it can be awkward, but God, I pray that those around us, that we would act accordingly, that we would be bold and courageous, Father, because we don't want our community to miss out on the love that you have for us. So God, we need you. We love you. And God, we thank you. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.